at the White Bull Conference with Anil Hansjee.
Hello.
Anil, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and what you're doing here.
Hey, so I'm Anil Hansjee. I run corporate development for Google out of EMEA, based in London. Essentially, that's M&A for Google, or rather, it's more likely the A than the M. But we do some strategic investing once in a while, but predominantly it's acquisitions. I'm here because Farley invited me, and you got to go where Farley calls. He's a great contact. I've respected him for a number of years. He's trying to put together a really good community here, which we need in Europe amongst the growth companies, from entrepreneurs to backers to advisors and obviously buyers like myself.
Mm-hmm. And so when you come to a conference like this, the White Bull Conference, are you looking for specific relationships? Or are you looking for something here?
Yeah, I mean, I think business is pretty much done via building relationships. So those are important to both maintain amongst community, a community that I know several people in, but also form new relationships, find interesting companies, and generally just contribute in a way in terms of doing some mentoring, giving some advice, and giving some perspectives.
So you're from Google perspective, you're doing acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
So the contacts here, I mean, do those guys give you some leads on potentially when they're prepared to exit and maybe an acquisition for you?
I'd be surprised if I sort of stumbled across a company that I hadn't heard of that was potentially an acquisition target. But you kind of can spot some companies early on that you figure, oh, these maybe one day might be interesting, and I'll follow them for a while. Or there might be a company I'm already talking to that I want to learn a little bit more about, or follow and see, how they've progressed since the last time I met them. But the chances that I find something completely new, that's rare. But Farley's managed to put together a good group of pitching companies, one or two that I hadn't heard of before. So there you go, he's surprised me.
Mm-hmm. And from what kind of companies is Google looking to acquire? What are you out there looking for?
That's a difficult one because we're in a fast-moving industry, like you know, and strategies change. Our developers act faster than I can act in terms of biz dev or relationship building. So targets we can have target areas. They tend to move pretty quickly, and so we typically look at more characteristics rather than looking specifically for a type of company. And those characteristics range from obviously the quality of the people, the deep technology that they're working on, the strong IP and patents that they may have, and actually proof points in the market. Have they gone out and developed something and proven that it works and there's great traction out there? So those are more characteristics that we look for. And in general, I would say stuff that fits into our range of products is always going to be interesting because it may help us accelerate our product roadmaps, expand our product roadmaps, or take them into new areas. And once in a while, we'll make bets on areas that we don't have the core competency in, where we need to bring that in from the outside to complement what we have on the inside. And let those companies form the basis of something completely new in Google, and we've kind of done that several times. Our whole geo effort was an example of that. Android was an example of that, and this year we've been doing a lot of social acquisitions where we hope to sort of launch something a little bit more interesting in the social space related to our existing tools and platforms.
So you're going to be competing with Facebook?
Facebook is a phenomenal company, and I wouldn't say that our approach is anywhere close to what they're trying to do in terms of their social site and their sort of closed community. We have a different perspective on how the social graph can be used amongst our existing tools and platforms.
I saw something they're looking at trying to compete with Google almost and creating some type of search platform within their community.
Well, search clearly is a dynamic product in a way. I mean, a lot of people think the whole search proposition is, been done over. But I think somebody put a slide up in the early days from Yahoo when it was basically a directory proposal. It then evolved into what Google have been doing in terms of algorithmics, and I think it's evolved beyond that. I mean, people have been focusing on UI, people have been focusing on latency, relevancy, and coverage. And those have been sort of the four paths that search has evolved into. And now, search over the last few years has gone into mobile, some more semantic-based search, and of course, verticalization of search, new players like financial comparisons and travel comparisons. And then clearly, you've got social search as another new way. So I think search is actually incredibly dynamic, and it's very difficult to say the whole search game is over. And we're a search company. We want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve in all of those dimensions.
Do you think Facebook may end up competing with you from a search standpoint? Because, I mean, more people spend more time on Facebook than on any other platform. I mean, it's extraordinary how much time people are spending on Facebook, and to have a search facility within Facebook seems like a no-brainer, and they're going down that path. It seems like they could be a significant competitor to Google.
I think we compete against a lot of different companies, and that's the beauty of our industry. It's very fast-moving. You have to respect any innovation that happens. And search, as I said, will evolve and have a strong social component. So we're better than to do social search than Facebook, quite clearly. The challenge for Facebook is how do they move from a world of predominantly entertainment to one of commerce and utility. I think if you look at the way people use search for us, there's a very clear commercial driver, hence our advertising products around search. And I think we have that leg up versus Facebook, but I do believe that users will use different tools for different purposes, and there's a place for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And Google Talk is somewhat of a competitor to Skype.
This talk is all about competition. I do think you're right. I mean, we are in a number of different product areas, and we have a number of competitors. And Google Talk, Skype. There's many different competitors in that space. And Skype again is a phenomenal product. It was a trailblazer. I use the product. Right now, I can get a great VoIP call using. When I'm in my Gmail using Google Talk. And I think, again, it's a different use case perhaps, and there'll be different target markets, and we'll have to see how that plays out. And right now, we don't pretend to be a clear Skype competitor. I think Skype is more an opportunity for us to work with in ways. But who knows how these things will develop. I can't speak for our product roadmaps in a lot of these areas, but I do believe that it actually ultimately benefits the users when they have the choice to use the right kind of application in the right environment that they're in, and they have a variety of choices to do that.
Mm-hmm. But back to the acquisitions. How many acquisitions have you made in the last 12 months?
Oh, you put me on the spot. I know that this year we're on our 20th in this calendar year.
Okay.
So more than 20 in the last in the last 12 months.
And those acquisitions range from how much to how much, from a purchase standpoint?
Well, there's a good variety of deal sizes in there. Generally, I would say 75%, if not slightly more, of our deals are smaller target companies, where we look at trying to complement our existing product lines with an add-on to that to help to accelerate the product roadmap, add great expertise and leadership, and maybe key IP into that product roadmap. Once in a while, we'll make a larger acquisition where clearly, perhaps we don't have the expertise in-house. Perhaps it's strategically important for us to be there. Perhaps we've even tried to be there. And we'll make those larger deals who tend to be category leaders in their space, and hence, demand the price tag that goes with. And so I would say, maybe 2/3, maybe 75% are, of the smaller category.
Smaller, is that 20 million or so? I mean, when you talk about small.
Certainly sub $100 million. I would say maybe even there's a good portion that are maybe even sub $50 million.
And the highest paid in the last year?
Well, the deal hasn't closed yet, but if it does close, and clearly there's a lot of work to be done, and before it does, I suspect it would be ITA.
ITA, yeah.
Out of those that have closed, AdMob's got to be up there amongst the top, and that also went through a regulatory review.
The ITA software was what, 700 million?
Yeah, I can't really comment on that deal until there's more clarification as to where we stand on that from the regulators.
Are you doing anything else in the travel space?
So I think it's important to state that this deal hasn't closed. So anything else implies that it actually does. So,
yeah.
So right now our focus is on, can we get this deal through, and then we'll have to see where we go from there. Part of doing this deal is clearly trying to work with the ecosystem in travel and trying to form the right kind of partnerships. So I think there's going to be a ton of really interesting biz dev partnership, relationship building that will go on side by side this acquisition. It's a large acquisition. If it goes through, there'll be a ton of integration work and partnership work. So it'll be our first priority rather than anything else.
Okay, great. And Central and Eastern Europe, but where do you see Google, and are you guys doing anything in Eastern Europe? There's not a whole lot of companies here, really. I think I met one venture firm from Slovenia, but it's kind of silent from that aspect. Is Google acquiring? Are you guys doing anything in Eastern Europe?
Yeah, it is a little disappointing that there isn't a better representation of either companies or investors from the region. I know that the ecosystems are more nascent there, but nonetheless, great talent. I've met a few investors from the region. Would love to see us cross-fertilize much more from West to Eastern Europe, or Central Europe for that matter. There's some great Polish investors. The Polish stock market has been a booming sort of local market. So I think the local ecosystem, local financing ecosystems seem well developed, and the private capitalization is more nascent, but I think will emerge. So I'd love to see more interaction. I didn't see that at this event, but perhaps that's something that Farley could do down the line. Personally, from a Google perspective, we have a number of offices clearly in a number of Central Eastern European companies. In fact, in Poland we have some great engineering centers there, which reflects the quality of engineers there, and we would love to add more via acquisitions. We haven't done any acquisitions in that region. It's not to say that we don't want to, or that there isn't the right talent. I'll give you a reference point. It took us almost 4 years before we did our first Israeli deal, and you could argue that's probably the highest concentration of tech entrepreneurial talent in one area. Likewise, we probably took around 3.5 years before we did our first UK deal. I'm referring to since I've been at Google. So these things do take a while to actually to actually break through and find the right kind of opportunity. The first one is often the hardest because it's sort of symbolic in a way and sets the bar. And we also have another challenge, which is we have a number of engineering offices, and we do want to manage that number in a way that makes sense from a local engineering remote management perspective. So we don't want to just be going around opening up willy-nilly new offices all around. So we want to manage that process as a bit. So typically there might be a relocation element, which sometimes is a little hard to ask people to do.
So your engineering facilities in Europe, you said you have something in Poland now?
Yes, we do have in Poland.
How many people do you have there?
I actually don't know, and it's not something that we really comment on, mainly because it changes quite dramatically as well.
You have something in India, I guess?
Yes, I don't cover that region, but clearly we have both development and sales and operations in India.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about Russia? You've got search engine in Russia. From my understanding, Google is basically not existent in Russia because these guys are so predominant there.
Well, Russia is a very interesting territory. Again, it's a country that we've had a strong presence in, both from a sales, advertising perspective, and from an engineering perspective. In fact, we have both St. Petersburg and Moscow engineering teams, again as a reflection of the quality of talent there, I would say, and the nascent advertising market. Clearly, Yandex is doing a phenomenal job. It's a company that we admire. We have recently, I would say, in the last 2 or 3 years, had major improvements for search in Russia in terms of our own share has been steadily moving upwards and is in a strong position. We've been doing that both organically and through some excellent partnership deals that our partnerships team has been signing with a variety of destination sites using Google search. And we will continue to plug away. I mean, it's one of the few countries where we aren't in a sort of a leadership role, but that sets the gauntlet down, and the country has some very unique challenges which represent, I think, what is difficult about this business, which is that search is a local issue, a local business, and they were a very fast mover in a country that admires local heroes, and so we've tried to respect that and move as quickly as we can, leveraging, I would say, more of a global resource base of innovation technologies that we can apply to a local market, and I think we've done that through a number of other products that we've launched in the market, whether they're sort of geo-related products or other types of products, so that we look at this more as a suite of solutions rather than just a single point solution of search. So we're trying to target these markets with a number of different products. And I've also been reasonably active there. I spent a good amount of time a couple of years back in trying to do a deal in the country, and from an acquisition perspective didn't work out, but we're definitely interested in expanding our role there, and I think we have a mutual respect for each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, I assume we'll see you here again next year.
I hope so, and I wouldn't say no to the fact if it's Barcelona. It's a lovely, or rather the outskirts of Barcelona. It's a lovely place to be and lovely weather. Much better than no doubt rainy London.
Yeah. Well, we'll be asking you again next year about your 20+ acquisitions that you made then.
This has been an acquisition rate unprecedented. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that it's the sort of the baseline of years to come. We've been through an amazing period of acquisition rate in the last just over 12 months. So it's been a busy time. Not sure how long it will last, but I'm looking forward to a little bit of a breather.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, and see you at the next White Bull Conference.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.